Moving into a new home is supposed to be the start of something good. A fresh beginning. A clean slate. But sometimes, what you move into, isn't empty. Sometimes, it's already watching you. These are 3 terrifying, true stories from people who thought they were just moving into a house. They didn't know what they were really bringing home. Story number 1. The Ones in the Garden. My name's Mark. This happened about 2 years ago, when my wife Anna and I moved into a quiet neighborhood just outside of Vancouver. We just had our second daughter, and between the baby gear, the toys, and the general chaos of apartment life, we needed space. So when we found a small house with a big backyard, we jumped on it. The place was old but charming. What caught our eye, or more specifically, Anna's eye, was the backyard. It had this tangled, overgrown garden and, oddly, these stone statues scattered throughout. Not the usual angelic or Greco-Roman kind. They were weird, stretched limbs, hollow eyes, abstract poses. Some looked like they were trying to run. Others looked like they were in pain. And for some damn reason, Anna loved them. "Gives the yard some character," she said. I didn't argue. One less thing to clean up, I figured. A few days after we moved in, I was drinking coffee by the kitchen window and noticed something strange. One of the statues, the one closest to the maple tree, was facing the opposite direction. Toward the fence, back to the house. I could have sworn it had been facing us before. But, I mean, who really keeps track of statue orientation, right? Next morning, another one had turned. That's when I knew I wasn't imagining things. I asked Anna if she'd moved them. She just gave me a look and said she hadn't even been in the yard that day. Our oldest daughter, Sophie, was too small to push one over even if she tried, and I sure as hell didn't touch them. But that night, I went out to try moving one myself, and I couldn't. I'm not a weak guy, but those things were heavy. Too heavy for one person. That's when I started getting scared. I tried not to make a big deal out of it. We were already stressed, new job, new baby, new mortgage. But then one night, I looked out the back window again, and they were all lined up. A perfect line along the back edge of the garden. Just standing there. All facing the house. Something about the arrangement, it wasn't just eerie. It felt intentional. Like they were watching. Waiting. I ran outside with a flashlight. Nothing. No footprints. No sign of tampering. And the worst part? They weren't even aligned in the grass like they had been moved, like the earth itself had shifted underneath them. Anna thought I was losing it. She joked that maybe we bought a haunted garden. I laughed along with her, but I wasn't sleeping much after that. And then things escalated. A week later, I woke up to our youngest crying on the baby monitor. I went into the nursery and saw that the window, which had been locked from the inside, was wide open. I checked every room, grabbed a kitchen knife, did a full sweep. Nothing. But the next morning, on the wall under the nursery window, in what looked like smeared ash, was the word, "Move." We called the police. They checked for signs of a break-in. Nothing. No prints. No clue. They told us to install cameras. We did, 4 of them, all around the property. That night, I stayed up, watching the feeds. Around 3:17 a.m., one of the backyard cameras cut to static. Then another. Then a third. The 4th stayed on, and I saw them. The statues. Moving. They weren't walking exactly. It was more like they were jerking forward, frame by frame, but they were definitely getting closer to the house. When I ran outside, they were all frozen again, still and silent like always. But their positions had changed. They were standing in a half-circle just a few feet from the back door. That was it. We packed bags and stayed in a motel the next night. When I came back the next morning to check the footage, there was nothing. The cameras had all gone dark at 3:17 a.m. and didn't come back until sunrise. But the craziest part? The statues were gone. Every single one. We hadn't moved them. Nobody saw a thing. We searched the entire property, even the woods behind the fence. Nothing. Weeks went by. Then a month. We tried to move on. Tried to forget. But last month, I got a call from the man who sold us the house. He sounded shaken. Said he needed to warn me. "Have you seen them?" he asked. I asked what he meant. "The statues," he said. "They come back. Just not always in the same place." Then he hung up. Last night, my daughter woke me up crying. Said there was someone in her closet. I opened the door, expecting a nightmare, a pile of clothes, anything. But no. Inside the closet, facing the wall, arms stiff at its sides, was one of the statues. And this time, it was smiling. Story number 2, The Room Behind the Steel Door. My name's Chris. This all happened late last fall when my partner Julia and I bought a house out in rural Utah. We'd both been craving quiet, space, something far from her overbearing family and my job in the city. We didn't have kids, just our dog, Ringo, a lazy but lovable mutt we'd rescued a year prior. The house we found was older than we wanted, but the price was too good to ignore. Huge lot, full basement, completely secluded. Julia called it a fresh start. That phrase keeps echoing in my head now, a fresh start, like it was a joke someone forgot to laugh at. About 2 weeks after moving in, we started having weird power issues. Specifically, the upstairs kept tripping, always the same circuit. Since I'm an electrician, I figured I'd sort it myself. So one rainy afternoon, I headed down to the basement. It was cluttered as hell, old furniture, boxes of junk the previous owners had clearly just left behind. As I was following the wiring, I saw something that didn't make sense, a huge, industrial steel door in the far corner, almost hidden behind an armoire. It looked totally out of place, like something from a fallout shelter. Thick, reinforced, and bolted shut. Naturally, I was curious. I went through the ring of random keys the owners had left us, and to my surprise, one of them actually worked. When I opened the door, I felt it instantly, a wave of cold, damp air, and something else I still can't describe. Like my body was telling me not to step forward, but my brain overruled it. The room beyond wasn't large. Just concrete walls, dim light, and a chair facing one of those walls like it had been set up for someone to sit and watch nothing. On the opposite side, there was a small mattress, moldy and sunken. It smelled awful. There were water bottles, food wrappers, and other things. Used tissues. A worn-out toothbrush. Someone had been living in there. That realization hit hard. But it got worse. In the far wall of that strange room was a second door, much smaller, half hidden. It wasn't locked. I opened it and found a narrow stairwell that led upward. At the top, our cellar door, the one that led to the backyard. We had never opened it, assuming it just led to the same basement. I stood there, stunned. For weeks, Julia and I had noticed small things going missing: a sock, a box of crackers, the remote. We blamed each other, or the dog. But someone had been coming into our house. From beneath our feet. I did what anyone would. I called the cops. They came, took a report, looked around. But there was no one in the bunker room anymore. No fingerprints. No signs of recent entry. They brushed it off as maybe a squatter or a runaway teen. Julia was terrified. I was furious. So I bolted the cellar door shut from both sides: chains, padlocks, furniture. I wasn't going to take chances. For a couple days, it was quiet. Until the scratching started. Late at night, we'd hear it. Not rats. Not pipes. Scratching. Slow, deliberate, from beneath the floorboards. Always under the bedroom. Then came the voices. Whispering. Muffled. Low. Too faint to make out, but definitely not in our heads. Ringo would bark at nothing, staring toward the vent. I tried calling the old owners. Number disconnected. We tried to stay calm, logical. Maybe echoes from outside, maybe bad insulation. That theory died the night someone knocked on our front door at 2:38 a.m. Not rang. Knocked. I looked out the peephole. No one. But there were footprints in the snow. Bare. Human. Leading from the woods to the door, then disappearing off the porch. And then, 2 nights later, someone got in. I woke up to Julia screaming. Our bedroom window was shattered inward. The lights were out. I grabbed the bat I kept under the bed and ran to her, but she was standing completely still. Frozen. Whimpering. She pointed to the hallway. There, just outside our room, was one of our dining chairs. And someone was sitting in it. I couldn't see his face. Just a silhouette. Shoulders hunched. Head slightly tilted. Hands resting on the arms. Then, without a sound, he stood up and walked back down the hall. Back toward the basement. I didn't follow. We moved out the next morning. I sent a locksmith the same day to change every lock in the house. He called me an hour later. He told me the steel door, the one in the basement, was wide open when he got there. But the chair was gone. So was the mattress. And carved into the concrete wall, in jagged, deep lettering, was a single sentence. You made it worse. Story number 3. The Lady Next Door. I moved into my first house when I was 28. Not a palace or anything, just a small, 2-bedroom place in a quiet California suburb. It was all mine, though. No roommates, no landlords, no late-night shouting matches from upstairs neighbors. For the first time in my life, it was quiet. Maybe too quiet. The adjustment was harder than I expected. I came from a big family, full of chaos and noise. So being alone felt wrong at first. I'd fall asleep with the TV on, just to keep the silence at bay. The house had a narrow balcony on the second floor. Barely big enough for me to stand on, but it became my favorite spot to unwind at night. I'd smoke out there sometimes, watching the streetlights and rooftops, listening to the wind. From that angle, I had a clear view into my back neighbor's yard. The place looked unkempt, overgrown grass, a collapsing shed, broken fence. I figured no one lived there. Until I saw her. She was standing motionless in the middle of the yard one night. Pale bathrobe, thin frame, gray hair in a tight bun. She wasn't doing anything. Just staring. Not at the garden. Not at the stars. At me. I went inside, told myself I imagined it. But it kept happening. Every night for the next week, I'd see her, always in the same spot, always staring. One time, she waved. I didn't wave back. Eventually, I convinced myself I needed to be neighborly. I walked around the block and knocked on her front door. The house looked like it hadn't been lived in for years, rotting porch, peeling paint, a mailbox overflowing with junk. Just as I turned to leave, the door creaked open. She was there. Same woman. Same robe. Same blank expression. "Hi," I said, "I just moved in behind you. Thought I'd say hello." She blinked at me, then slowly said, "I know who you are." I froze. "Sorry." "I watch," she said. "Every night." Then she shut the door. I should have left it alone. But something about her haunted me. The way she moved. The way she knew when I was outside. She started appearing in her windows during the day. Following me with her eyes from behind curtains. And then I found the first sign she'd been in my yard, a single, faded slipper, lying just beneath my balcony. Definitely not mine. I called my sister that night, told her what was going on. She laughed it off, said I was probably just dealing with an old woman with dementia. That's what I wanted to believe. But 2 nights later, I woke up to the doorbell ringing. Not once. Not twice. Over and over. Rapid, frantic presses, like someone was jamming their finger into the button as fast as they could. I looked at the peephole. It was her. No robe this time. She was wearing black. Something loose, like a funeral dress. And she was crying. "Please," she whispered, loud enough for me to hear through the door. "He's inside your house." I stepped back. "He followed you in," she said. "You brought him with you." I didn't know what to say. Didn't know what she meant. But something about the way she said it, it hit me deep, like a cold needle sliding into my spine. I didn't open the door. I told her to leave or I'd call the police. She stared at me through the peephole for a few more seconds, then smiled. And walked away. I locked every window that night. Every door. Left lights on in every room. For a while, nothing happened. Days passed. I didn't see her. I tried to move on. Until last week. I came home from work and found my front door unlocked. Nothing seemed missing. No signs of a break-in. But on my kitchen table, perfectly centered, was a single Polaroid photo. It showed me. Asleep. In my bed. I called the cops. They searched everything, but there was no sign of forced entry. They asked if I might have left the door open. I said no, but I could tell they didn't believe me. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I walked outside to take a breath. And there she was. Standing in her yard again. But this time, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at my house. At the upstairs window. Her mouth moved. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the words form. "Behind you." I spun around, nothing there. When I turned back, she was gone. I haven't seen her since. But last night, I found something carved into the inside of my closet door. 4 words. You sleep so loud.
This story has come to an end. Ever had something like this happen to you? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next true horror story.